Tell me if this sounds familiar. You decided to check out that new reboot of the old cartoon you loved as a kid, but it didn't take long for you to notice that something was different this time around. The story was way more complicated than you were expecting. There are a lot of confusing details and questions in the story that are drawn out across multiple episodes. You continue on, hoping to find answers to these questions, but if anything, the story only gets more mysterious, with each answer only raising new questions, and the mysteries keep piling up until your brain starts to hurt keeping track of it all, and you get to the end and you're like, help, I need someone to explain this to me. Fortunately, that's why I'm here. Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated is what I like to call a mystery box story, definition on screen, and I've dedicated myself to explaining as many of them as possible. If you have unanswered questions about the convoluted lore of a story you've just finished, then I'm the person who can give you those answers. Then afterwards, I give each mystery box story a rating out of 10, using my 10 criteria for what makes mysteries like these fun and engaging. In this video, I'm going to give you a comprehensive explanation of every question you could possibly have about this story. So, let's hop in the mystery machine and explain Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Ooh, happy Halloween! Today we're going to... What? You're kidding. Come on, I can't keep anything straight in here. I haven't even finished watching all the DC movies. It's fine. So, Scooby-Doo. If you've been a lifelong Scooby fan, odds are that when this show rolled around, it had you raising an eyebrow. The original Scooby-Doo show, Scooby-Doo Where Are You?, came out in the 60s. Ever since then, it's been sort of endlessly rebooted with new movies and shows that are all pretty much the same with some minor cosmetic changes. But they were all super light Monster of the Week cartoons. Mystery Incorporated was something different. This show really pushed the limits of what Scooby-Doo could be. It had top-notch animation and writing, and it told a serialized story instead of sticking to purely self-contained episodes. Mysterious details and questions were raised and answered every episode that all added up to a massive story that spanned the entire show. Scooby-Doo wasn't just a mystery show anymore, it was a mystery box show. Let's try to untangle the story it presented, and see just how good of a mystery the overarching plot was. The show begins with the mystery gang living in the town of Crystal Cove. The town is a tourist trap known for spooky supernatural events. But long before the show started, Scooby and the gang caught all the monsters and proved that they were all just guys in costumes. As they work on catching the latest monster in the first episode, Daphne finds a locket with a picture of an unknown teen couple. At the end of the first episode, the gang is all hanging out with radio DJ Angel Dynamite when they receive a message from a mysterious voice named Mr. E, who warns them that they're on the verge of discovering a big secret about the town.
The truth behind the curse of Crystal Cove. The real mystery has just begun.
And this is how the first few episodes go. There's a single mystery to solve each episode, but periodically, the gang will get a mysterious message from Mr. E, the most important of which concerns 4 teens who disappeared in the Crystal Cove caves years ago. Their names were Brad, Judy, Cassidy, and Ricky. They and their pet parrot, Professor Pericles, made up a group of mystery-solving teens known as Mystery Incorporated before they disappeared. Alongside that, Mr. E will also drop clues that help the gang solve that episode's mystery. And the audience also gets to see that he was responsible for creating some of those mysteries to manipulate the gang for his own ends. Gotta love a good old-fashioned character who knows all the answers but won't reveal what information they know because of reasons. Every good mystery box show has one. The gang soon meets Professor Pericles, who is basically a maniacal cartoon supervillain who supposedly murdered the original Mystery Inc. He and Mr. E are in competition with one another, and Mr. E warns the gang that if Professor Pericles uncovers the mystery of Crystal Cove, something very bad will happen. There are a few other players in town who know about Crystal Cove's secrets. A long time ago, the Darrow family found a mysterious artifact that caused their mansion to sink underground. It becomes increasingly clear that Fred's dad, Mayor Jones, knows more than he's letting on. And Velma eventually discovers that Angel Dynamite is really Cassidy from the original Mystery Inc. Angel/Cassidy tells Velma that the artifact they got from Darrow Mansion is a piece of a device called a Planispheric disc. Mayor Jones also has a piece, but it's stolen by Professor Pericles. Cassidy explains to the gang that the original Mystery Incorporated discovered the Planispheric disc, but were then forced to fake their deaths and were chased out of town when an unknown person threatened their families. In the Season 1 finale, this person is revealed to be Mayor Jones. Years ago, he came to town in search of a mysterious cursed treasure. Once the original Mystery Inc. started getting close to discovering the treasure, he and Professor Pericles chased them away. We also learned that Mayor Jones isn't Fred's real dad, and that Fred's real parents are Brad and Judy from Mystery Inc. With all these reveals and big events, the gang begins to fracture. and at the end of Season 1, they all go their separate ways. But Scooby is determined to bring them back together and stop Professor Pericles from assembling the Planispheric disc. It doesn't take long into Season 2 for the gang to get back together. They get back to solving the mysteries and stopping Professor Pericles, but they don't get very far, until Brad and Judy show up. They seem like they're overjoyed to be reunited with their son Fred, but it quickly becomes clear that they have an ulterior motive. The gang finds Planispheric disc pieces 3 and 4, and the original Mystery Inc. gets together in a mysterious meeting arranged by Professor Pericles. Oh, speaking of, we finally learn who Mr. E is, Ricky, the final member of the original Mystery Inc. Meanwhile, the gang finds disc piece 5 on an old Spanish ship, and we catch a glimpse of a ghost of a conquistador who mumbles Nibiru before disappearing. Velma begins to discover that this has all happened before. Alongside them and the previous Mystery Inc., tons of groups consisting of 4 kids and an animal have been coming to Crystal Cove for centuries, where they try and fail to uncover the town's secrets. Professor Pericles uncovers the final Planispheric disc piece from the corpses of one of these groups. The good guys and the bad guys each have 3 disc pieces. Professor Pericles and Mr. E orchestrate a plan to steal the gang's pieces, but the gang turns the tables on them and ends up stealing theirs instead. We keep seeing all kinds of ghosts and ghouls repeating the name Nibiru. This culminates in Nova, Brad and Judy's dog, saying, "Nibiru is coming." Nova, who we didn't even know could talk before this, explains that she is part of an alien race called the Anunnaki, who visit Earth every few thousand years during a time called Nibiru. Scooby is also descended from the Anunnaki, and that's why he could talk. Yeah, that's canon, I guess. Things start heating up as we head into the finale. Pericles captures Daphne and forces Fred to trade him the Planispheric disc to get her back. Then Pericles activates something with the disc and says,
"I'm coming to set you free."
Nova explains that there was some kind of evil entity under Crystal Cove, sealed away by the original Mystery Incorporated back in ancient Aztec times. Professor Pericles uses an army of robots to excavate the caves and awaken this entity using the Planispheric disc. Doing this opens a gateway to another dimension of sorts, and the gang follows Pericles inside. Despite their best efforts, Pericles succeeds in releasing the entity, an evil Anunnaki hellbent on destroying the entire universe. The entity possesses Pericles and starts devouring the entire town. Scooby tries to use a spear called the Heart of the Jaguar to destroy it, but it just breaks. Then Scooby figures out that the real weapon he needs is the power of friendship. There's a big explosion, and everything changes. Time resets, and Crystal Cove reverts to what it would have been if the entity had never corrupted it. Dead characters revive, everyone in town is living their best life, and they all live happily ever after. This show is pretty light compared to what I usually cover. It's got a series of mysteries that run through the entire story, but by the end, all the important stuff is pretty straightforwardly explained. Still, there might be some more specific details that get lost in the shuffle. So let me break down every question the show raised and give you an answer to put all the information in one place.
I need to tell you something and I need you to listen. I'm not a guy anymore.
What?
Let's start all the way back at the beginning of the timeline, with Nibiru, the Anunnaki, and the Entity. Nibiru is the name of an alien planet, the home of the aliens known as the Anunnaki. Nibiru is also the name of an event where planets align and the Anunnaki can travel from their home planet to Earth. This was inspired by real-world mythology and conspiracy theories about a planet called Nibiru that would collide with Earth. The last Nibiru event was 3,600 years ago, when Anunnaki came to Earth and took the forms of animals to help humans. But one Anunnaki turned evil and sought to destroy all reality, so the other Anunnaki imprisoned it in a sarcophagus. By the way, the evil entity doesn't really have a name, but some materials surrounding the show just call it Nibiru. So if you're keeping track, that's 3 separate concepts that are all called Nibiru. The next thing we have to address is the Curse of Crystal Cove. Over and over, characters refer to the town as cursed. Why? Well, the evil entity is still able to exert some level of psychic control over people nearby. Over the years, it manipulated countless people into doing bad things in an attempt to get them to free it. A cloud of negativity and misery surrounds wherever this thing is. Its influence caused people to fight over treasure, turn on each other, and most importantly, dress up in ridiculous monster outfits to commit crimes.
What you see are the best parts of all of us that have been trapped here in between worlds because of our association with the cursed treasure of Crystal Cove. We've all been tainted in one way or another by that darn treasure.
That's why when it's defeated in the finale and the timeline is reset, everyone is so much happier. They're living the life they would have lived if it hadn't been for the entity's corrupting influence. Also, animals are more easily corrupted than humans because the Anunnaki have a natural affinity for animals. But let's get back to the timeline. After the entity was imprisoned, what happened? Well, it sat around for a while, but eventually, it psychically called a group of Mesoamerican teens, the Hunters of Secrets, to have them free it. However, the hunters figured out this thing was evil and created the heart of the Jaguar as a weapon to destroy it. But before they could use it, Spanish conquistadors rolled in and mistook the entity for valuable treasure. Eventually, the conquistador captain Fernando El Aguirre also figured out that it was evil. He brought his ship up north to the future site of Crystal Cove and buried the entity's sarcophagus inside an interdimensional gateway with the help of the Planispheric disk. Oh, I guess that means I should explain the Planispheric disk now. All we know about its creation is that it was made by using alchemy during the conquistadors' time. When assembled, it serves as a map that allows you to navigate time and space. It also has a corrupting influence on anyone who has it, sort of like a One Ring situation, but it seems like this is just an extension of the entity's influence rather than something inherent to the disc itself. Anyway, El Aguirre used the disc to find a gateway between dimensions and lock the entity away to provide an extra layer of protection. He sealed the entrance with 4 gates and 4 keys. Then he scattered the 4 keys and the 6 disc pieces so that nobody would ever be able to release the entity. But the entity kept scheming. Over and over again, it would psychically influence groups of 4 teens and 1 animal to try and find the supposed treasure and trick them into freeing it. It got Porto the donkey from the Fraternes Mysterium to blow up half the town. And after the rest of her group was gone, Amanda Gluck built a submarine and robots to explore under the town alongside a young Professor Pericles. All 6 disc pieces were found, fought over, lost, and found again, but nobody was able to unite them all until the end of the show. That brings us to the first Mystery Incorporated. How did they get involved in all this, and what happened to them? Well, they were yet another group of 4 teens and an animal drawn to the mystery of Crystal Cove by the entity. But this time, things were a little different. The kids didn't know what they were onto at first, but Professor Pericles did. Remember, he worked with Amanda Gluck. He knew exactly what was down there. Pericles betrayed the kids and teamed up with soon-to-be Mayor Jones and fabricated evidence implicating the kids' families in various crimes. They then blackmailed the kids into leaving town forever. Afterwards, Jones pinned their disappearance on Pericles and made it seem like he murdered them, getting Pericles locked up. Not long afterwards, Brad and Judy attempted to return to town with their newborn child, which Mayor Jones then kidnapped and basically used as a hostage to keep Brad and Judy away. Mayor Jones raised the baby as his own, who grew up to become Fred Jones Jr. By the way, Mayor Jones never knew about Nibiru. He was just after the conquistadors' gold. All 4 kids grew into bitter, resentful adults. They also learned the truth about what was under Crystal Cove. When the new Mystery Incorporated stumbled onto the same trail years later, they each exerted whatever influence they could on the gang. That's one of the trickier things to follow throughout the show. By the time we get to the events of the series, all 5 of them are doing so much scheming and lying and changing allegiances that it becomes really hard to keep track of how much each character knows and what their motives are, especially because you, the audience, don't get the full picture until the very end of the show. Let's start with Pericles. Starting long before the show, Pericles knew exactly what the entity was. Everything he ever did was for the purpose of freeing the entity and offering himself up as its servant. He's the only character who truly understood the nature of the creature they'd be unleashing. The other 4 all thought they'd be finding powerful alien treasure, without understanding the specifics. Brad and Judy were pretty straightforward. They wanted the treasure, and they would do anything to get it. They lie and betray just about everyone they work with to try and get the treasure for themselves. Ricky, Mr. E, is a little more complicated. He was also after the treasure, and he tried to manipulate the new Mystery Inc. into finding it for him. But Mr. E has more of a heart than the others and refuses to go as far. In the finale, once he realizes what Nibiru really is, he comes to regret everything he did and sacrifices himself to help save the gang. Cassidy, meanwhile, gave up the search for the treasure long ago. She lived in town under the name Angel Dynamite to hide from Mayor Jones. She works with Mr. E, briefly, and only because she wants to find a way to protect the kids from harm. That brings our timeline to the modern day. The new Mystery Incorporated is led by Mr. E to become aware of the Planispheric disk, and they start investigating without fully understanding what they've stumbled into. Along the way, the old Mystery Inc. helps them and/or betrays them over and over, until eventually the gang is able to piece together the disk and find the 4 keys. They eventually realize that there is no real treasure beneath Crystal Cove, just an alien world-eating monster that they need to destroy. Unfortunately, Brad, Judy, and Pericles steal the disk back from them and awaken the entity. Just when it seems like all is lost, Scooby spears the entity with the heart of the Jaguar, which only works if the group using it is true friends, and destroys it. So that's basically the entire timeline of events. There are a couple more things worth mentioning though. Like, is this show part of the same canon as any other Scooby-Doo shows? Short answer, no. Long answer, by the time the show starts, the gang has been together solving mysteries for a while. In the Crystal Cove Museum, we see all the costumes of monsters the gang caught before the show started. And they're all the same monsters from the first ever Scooby-Doo show, Scooby-Doo Where Are You? Besides that, there are a few nods to events of previous shows as if they happened to these versions of the characters. so you could choose to believe that this is a direct continuation of older shows if that's what you wanted. But I think obsessing over canon in general is pointless and annoying, and I don't think putting these shows in the same universe adds anything. So I choose to believe that Mystery Incorporated is its own canon, and that these characters went through events that were very similar to old shows but weren't exactly the same.
Look away, Daphne. We all promised each other that we would never speak of him. Not ever.
Finally, I also have to ask, do people die in this show? Because there are a lot of unclear non-deaths. Ed Machine enters a room with Professor Pericles, screams, and is never seen again. Cassidy was on the submarine when it blew up. Hot Dog Water gets shot to death off screen. And in the last episode, the entity kills and eats most of the town. And yet, as far as anyone can tell, these characters all did actually die. It doesn't always register to the audience that these characters die because this is a children's cartoon and they can't show it. Plus, the fact that everyone comes back to life when the timeline resets makes the deaths feel less impactful in hindsight. But yes, these characters really did die.
I don't want to say anything.
Did Ed Machine
just die? You know, it was really unclear.
Okay, those are all the mysteries explained. But are the mysteries fun? Is it enjoyable to sort through all these details and solve them along with the characters? Is this a good mystery box story? Number 1. Does the show open with a big and obvious mystery? Yes, it does open with a big and obvious Mr. E. Eh? Get it? You start the show wondering who Mr. E is and what he wants with the gang. Pretty soon, that spirals out into the Planispheric disk and all the different pieces to the mystery of Crystal Cove. Eventually though, all questions tie back to the Anunnaki and Nibiru, and the entity's attempts to gain freedom. Every question is presented in a way that the audience can latch onto and try to solve on their own, with characters like Velma sometimes explicitly asking them out loud. I wouldn't call the show especially long. With 2 seasons, it doesn't have the same breadth of lore that I can really sink my teeth into. There are mysteries throughout the show's entire run, and there's never a shortage of things to wonder about up to the very last episode. Plus, I have to give some props to the individual episodic mysteries. Every episode has a real whodunit with multiple suspects. I especially love the episode with the evil gnome, where you think the really tall guy can't be a suspect, but it turns out he's been on stilts the whole time. We've come a long way from old Scooby-Doo, where the culprit was always either somebody we'd never seen before or the only other character in the episode. All mysteries are part of the story world and have clear and specific effects on the plot. The ending is just about everything I want in a story like this. All the biggest questions about Crystal Cove and Nibiru and the disc have been answered in a satisfying way. But it might take a second watch through, or a video like this, to help you get a complete picture of every little thing that happened and why. And of course, with an ending this satisfying, there's no doubt in my mind that the writers planned the big reveals in advance. Finally, the mysteries are strongly tied to the characters. These kids call themselves Mystery Incorporated. They care about the mysteries. The whole appeal of the show is that you get to watch them uncover all this. They are just as hungry for answers as we are. Nobody saw this show coming. Who thought freaking Scooby-Doo could craft a complex ongoing story in the vein of Twin Peaks? Speaking of which, that Twin Peaks episode was something else. When I first saw this, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I watched the whole sequence with my jaw hanging wide open. A Scooby-Doo and Twin Peaks crossover. Never in a million years would I have predicted that. But I and millions of Scooby fans are so grateful for everything the show was able to pull off. It quickly gained a reputation as the best Scooby-Doo show, and in my opinion, that reputation is well deserved. Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated gets a final mystery box rating of 9 out of 10.
Well, gang, it looks like we've got another...
mystery on our hands. Oh, Fred, we're such soulmates. We're finishing each other's sentences.
Come on, let's split up and look for clues.
Like, I guess that means we're all soulmates.